Hello Hearthstone gamers, this video is going to be for the best decks in Wild Hearthstone. Now Wild Hearthstone is usually a metagame that does not really change that often unless there is an expansion or cards released. So this video should be very relevant throughout, I don't know, probably a year from now. I imagine that none of these decks will get changed unless there is some kind of nerfs that Blizzard doesn't want us to know about. But in this video, you will find a bunch of awesome lists that will help you climb to a higher rank, whether that is bronze, whether that is diamond or legend. All of these decks will be good enough for you to get to a higher rank. Now, if you do enjoy this video and you want to help support me, subscribe, like that video, comment below if you think there's another list that I missed. Like, I'm not going to include Secret Mage into this video because I think most people know what Secret Mage is, but there is a little bit better decks as that could be surprising. First things first, let's start with arguably one of the most frustrating decks to play against, Reno Priest. Now, Reno Priest is in a really interesting spot right now because the deck is actually super good against majority of the matchups. The only drawback of this deck and class, I guess, in Wild is that it's kind of hard to play. You need to understand that there are some things you need to hold on for you to win games. In other games, it's just about using resources to survive. But the main aspect of this list comes down to getting your Shadow Reaper Anduin and your Raza the Chained, because what happens is that Anduin's hero power is now free, so you get to do 2 damage in between cards, consistently doing a bunch of damage. It also works really well with Spawn of Shadows because every time you use your hero power, you just deal 4 damage. And it turns out that priests like to heal their face while they're playing cards, so it turns out you will not die before your opponent, which is generally great. We have one of the best cards in the game, which is Reno. Talon really is great in this matchup because it helps you draw your Reno in case you need it, because Anduin is not a hero card, and the rest of this is just pretty much surviving. You also have game against combo decks, which seems to be one of the worst matchups in Wild for control decks, which is Dirty Rat. You can pull a Ticketus, you can pull the Flamewaker out, you can pull any combo piece that might be there, because that is the whole aspect of the Dirty Rats. The rest of them is just to draw. And of course, you do have cards like Zephyros, which is just insane. You're basically running every Highlander card you can here. Kazakus, of course, is really good. We use this one instead of the Golem Shaper one because the Golem Shaper one is good, but it's more minion based. You really want to just survive, and this Kazakus does a really good job. Now, the one thing I will say about Reno Priest is that it is good, but it's not the best deck in the format. There are better decks currently. Sorry for the starting soon, I'm stupid. But we will talk about the next best list, I think, which is currently APM Mage. Now, I hate this deck with an absolute passion. The times I go against it, it just makes me really sad, because it's like, do I really want to play this game out if they get the nuts? The whole idea of this deck is really simple. It's kind of like what the Quest Mage used to be, except for just confined down to just a couple cards. And those cards are Incanter's Flow, which is super good, Sorcerer's Apprentice, which is obviously insane, and we have Flamewaker. Now, Flamewaker is an interesting card because of the fact that it just burns your opponent out without really that much setup. And when you have cards like Incanter's Flow and Sorcerer's Apprentice that do discount your spells, you can do some pretty great things. You also have one of the best cards ever, which is Refreshing Springwater, because not only does it cast a spell for your Flamewaker, but gives you mana back for you to play more spells, and it drew you 2 cards, which just basically gives the gas that is needed. Also, a bunch of other draw that could be used. You can get draw off Primordial Glyph. Research Product does not really matter in this, because generally by the time you play Flamewaker and Sorcerer's Apprentice, you just kill them. And because there are no legendaries in this deck other than Stargazer Luna, which is not really necessary because quite literally it's just in here for more consistent draw, but sometimes you just get the absolute nuts and you can burn your opponents. I have died against this deck on turn 5 multiple times. So that's where Dirty Rat comes through, because if you have the Rat and you can pull up an Apprentice or a Flamewaker, it can delay the draw. Lotheb's really good against this, but that's the whole game plan here. There's not really anything else to talk about this. I do not like this list in the slightest. I hope they kind of do something about it because it's super unfun, but there are better lists, which is the next one, Darkglare Warlock. Now, Darkglare Warlock has really seen a lot of presence throughout its inception, because the fact is that you cheat so much mana so early that majority of the time decks can't really deal with it. One of the benefits of Darkglare Warlock is that it kind of has a good matchup against almost everything, because most things can't deal with a Flesh Giant that early on. There is a chance that you do hurt yourself a lot against aggro, and that's how you die, but a lot of decks can't actually deal with what Darkglare does. The main purpose of this is the card, obviously, that is in it, which is Darkglare. Darkglare gives you the ability to, get mana crystals back when you deal damage to yourself, and almost everything in this deck deals something to you, right? Raise Dead does, Librarian does, Spirit Bomb does, the Tour Guide because it gives you free hero power does. Cheeky Ankle Biter is super good in this list because not only does it give you the damage, but it also heals you too, which means your Flesh Giants get 2 cheaper rather than 1. You have the Molten Giants because you're going to hurt yourself a lot. It's just a lot of very interesting mechanics put together to make a very, very profound, complicated, hurt yourself Warlock deck. Now, that's the only thing about this deck that could be a little challenging, is that it is kind of weird to play. There's not a single other deck I can really mention that really wants to hurt themselves as much as Darkglare does. But at the same time, it's like you want to, because your whole deck is catered around you getting these early giants out as fast as possible with your opponent not doing anything. You do have healing in case you get low. Drain Soul's super good. And with Temzin, it is insanely powerful for you to just kind of just get a bunch of life, Backfire for more draw in case you're early on, and then of course this Larian for more draw. This deck is super simple once you actually get the idea behind you, but it will take a couple games to get a super used to it, because hitting yourself and expecting to get some kind of mana is super interesting, right? But there is one deck that I would recommend more than any other list on this, which is the hand buff Paladin. Now, Bodybuilder, if you do end up watching this, I thank you for creating this awesome deck, and this is super fun. When I played this list, I didn't lose a single game. And not maybe this one specifically, but with this archetype, this list is from Tempo Storm, and I literally like the way they did this. Now, if you don't know what hand buffing is, it's basically buffing your hands. Glowstone Technician is a great way of doing that, but you don't really rely on that card unless it's a really late game matchup. You want to, on average, play tempo-y, because most of the decks in Wild are super fast. Like, you don't have time to hold all these cards for a Secret Mage or a Reno Priest or any other decks I mentioned, because against APM, you'll just lose. You need to shove out your minions, and you do a really good job because First Day School is fantastic. Night draws you, obviously the holy spells like Hand of a Doll, which is great. Crab Rider, it can be so frustrating for a lot of decks to deal with, because that means they're using resources instead of using the, getting cards for their combo. Loatheb can completely shut out games against a lot of the Mage / Reno decks, because increasing the spells by 5 is a really big deal for a lot of decks. A lot of decks just can't handle it. And of course, you have a lot of removal / just direct damage. It may not seem like it, but Chillbait Champion and the Argent Horse Rider, when they are buffed, because Glowstone Technician is not your only one, right? You have the Smuggler's one, which is good. You have the Grime Street Outfitter. And when those get buffed and you can just shove that face, people die. And when people die, they can't kill you. And that's usually a huge plus. And that's basically what you want to do. Again, all these deck codes are in the description. Would highly recommend this one the most. It's the simplest probably to get into, other than maybe APM Mage, because the idea is super simple. But to play this perfectly and get to a higher rank, this can be a little challenging. This list and this type of archetype has hit rank 1 quite a bit recently, and I hope that this will be very helpful for a lot of you. If you enjoyed this video, like I said, subscribe. Let me know what other decks you think are really good in Wild. I would love to play more decks that are competitive, so I don't have to go against APM Mage and suffer. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.